Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazo.
Hey friends, thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for sharing the podcast. Thanks to your donations also, we completed our fundraiser in the spring, and because of that, we are now on harpazo.com, Pioneer Network, Beck TV, and God's Learning Channel. Thanks to you. Hopefully very, very soon, Jack Hibbs' Real Life Network. So we're growing. God bless you, and thanks for your prayers. Cheryl Chumley is my guest today, and we're going to talk a lot about the assassination attempt on President Trump, the Republican National Convention, which she was in Milwaukee a couple days ago, and she's an online editor and commentary writer and host of the Bold and Blunt podcast for the Washington Times, one of the online sources and papers that is good that you can actually go to. And she's got some great books out as well, which we talked about last time. Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. Also, prior to that, Socialists Don't Sleep. Christians Must Rise or America Will Fall. You can email her at ccchumley@washingtontimes.com. Check out her. We're going to talk about some of her articles today and her impressions of the Republican Convention and just everything that's going on. So Cheryl, welcome back to Worldview Matters. Good to see you.
David, it's so great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Most welcome. As I said before we got on the podcast, welcome to our time zone. You're in Wisconsin, Milwaukee. First of all, you know what? Your Substack, let's mention that because that's where I'm going to go to for a couple of the articles today. What's the easiest way for people to get to your Substack?
CherylChumley.substack.com is the address, and I post there a couple times a week.
Great. So we're going to go to that and also talk about a couple articles and the Secret Service. Before we do that, your impression of just what has gone down since just the historic failed assassination attempt on President Trump, and then we'll talk about the pick of J.D. Vance, and you watched his speech at the convention. So let's go back to the assassination attempt. We're going to talk a lot about the Secret Service and just get your take on that.
So the Secret Service, right, we're finding out daily now, more info's coming out. And the latest that was most shocking to me was that the Secret Service were alerted of this suspect on the roof an hour before Donald Trump spoke, which seems an epic fail. Now, I understand Kimberly Cheadle, the director of Secret Service, did make an appearance at the Republican Convention, which, you know, on her side, that's a good thing. She said she doesn't want to step away from her job, which I think she should be fired. But the fact that she does not want to step away and she's going to fight to keep that position, the fact that she showed up and put herself in the lion's den and was, of course, confronted by many on the Republican Party, at least that shows that she's trying to take some sort of, accountability, I guess. And she will appear before Congress in the coming weeks, so we'll learn more. But look, there's no way to spin this in a good light for the Secret Service. They failed. Donald Trump was hit by a bullet. An innocent person was killed and two others injured, and it all falls on the head of Kimberly Cheadle.
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to get to J.D. Vance in a minute and the Republican platform, maybe some of the prayers to open and close. I think it was Monday or Tuesday night. But let's stick on this topic because you wrote an article, Secret Service Failures Due to Democrats' Acceptance of Low Standards. Well, I mean, that's another argument there, low standards. But we're talking about epic failure, historic failures from, not being able to track down the guy once they were notified. He was there with a gun, letting President Trump go out to begin. They should have never let him out there. They should have, and there's so many, and then her excuse about the sloped roof when you're looking at these other guys on another roof that's even more of an angle. So there's so many things that are wrong with this picture, and you can't help some Americans for thinking, okay, this was all planned. This is not, and now the media is saying, oh, he was on his own, this lone shooter, right? It was just his idea. He outsmarted the Secret Service and the FBI, and he got in there. It was all just his plan. So your thoughts on some of that?
So it's always difficult to do the Monday morning quarterbacking, right? Because you can always, with the hindsight at your right hand, you can always look back and point to this mistake and that mistake. So really what I did with this piece was I looked deeper. And if you look at what the Democrat Party has fostered for years, perhaps even decades now, it's this sort of atmosphere of acceptance of incompetence, right? They always shelter those that should be fired. And it's for egregious incompetence. If you just look at the Joe Biden administration, you had Lloyd Austin with the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan. He kept his job. He kept his title. Kamala Harris appointed to be the so-called czar of the border. She didn't even visit the U.S.-Mexico border. Of course, she kept her job and title. Pete Buttigieg with the rollout of the EV charging systems. He had billions of tax dollars at his disposal to set the stage for ushering in Joe Biden's big green dream of widespread electric vehicles, and he built 8. And so then, of course, you even look at Joe Biden, the feckless president from the very beginning, the ultimate of incompetence, and he has his job, he has his title. So this is the Secret Service that this administration has appointed and created and fostered. So we really shouldn't be surprised when it shows itself as incompetent.
Point taken. I'm sure you had to kind of whittle yourself down to just those examples there because there were probably many, many more, right?
Right.
Didn't want your article to be too lengthy. So there's one thing I wanted to ask you about too. There's another article I've been reading, I've been studying about, I'm reading Chris Rufo and following others on the whole DEI, which is a Marxist cult, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there are articles saying that this DEI focus is now even more under scrutiny after the Trump assassination attempt. We saw female agents there, a couple of them outside the car that he was put into, the vehicle that he was put into, kind of fumbling with maybe trying to holster her gun. And they looked like they were like 5'6". Trump is 6'3". How on earth are they supposed to protect or, shield some? There's so many issues with female agents, not to say that they couldn't do the job, but there are some glaring problems here, irregularities maybe, and are these due to this DEI policy?
Absolutely. And look, I think Kimberly Cheadle was quoted as saying that her goal with the Secret Service was to bring in 30% women, make the force 30% women. And I'm all for females doing the same jobs as men, so long as the standards aren't changed. If you look at state police, right, they have a standard that the state police officers have to be, at least in certain states that I've lived in, have to be at least 6 foot in height. And there's a reason for that. When they approach the vehicles on the highway, they need the immediate intimidation factor in order to calm any chaos that might result from that stop. And I remember years and years and years ago, I was in the military. I'm talking going back in time to Bill Clinton years. And when I came out of the military, one of the first pieces I penned was a commentary that was titled, "Most GI Janes Should Go Home." And the reason why is based on my first person personal experiences in the military, I saw that standards were being dropped left and right to accommodate the promotion of women in the military. And that's a recipe for disaster. So things have only gotten worse in the years since the 1990s because now we have openly embraced DEI, which is doing just that, creating some kind of false equality and equal system where really one doesn't exist.
There's a quote in another article over at the Washington Stand talking about in 2023 what she said. Cheadle said, "I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now, head of the Secret Service, of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing opportunities for everybody in our workforce, and particularly women." And she also apparently said she wants to include the LGBTQ, and that's the whole DEI program. So back to the assassination attempt, Cheryl Chumley, and your article. She stuck all the agents inside that building, that the shooter was on top of the roof. I know I read that right, and I think I heard that reported, but you're going in the building. Can you explain any more about that? Because it's just, there's so many head scratchers here.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain that. I don't. I don't know how to explain so many things that we're finding out on that fateful day, right? With the civilians who, for 2 minutes, were tapping on the shoulders of police officers and saying, "Hey, look at that suspect on top of the roof with a gun." And honestly, if they had the right to carry into that rally, if just average civilians had the Second Amendment right to carry, they could have taken them out. They didn't even need the police, but there are so many questions, and it all does go back to this air of incompetence that the Democrats have fostered. And in one very big way, what you rightly point to as a Marxist principle, the DEI. It's not about bringing in the best candidate. It's about bringing in the certain type of candidate that's needed to advance a political agenda. And that oftentimes leaves the very best and brightest out of that equation. And really, it disincentivizes those who are the best and brightest because they don't want to deal with the atmosphere of politics and all that goes along with maintaining a DEI atmosphere.
So, Cheryl, before we get to another article of yours, I wanted to talk about Trump's finest moment, fight, 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 with his fist in the air. That was just, I mean, that even surprised me. I'm thinking, who has the sense to jump up and let people know that he's okay, and then message to the people that, hey, we can't take this lying down. But back to the police, do you sense there's a passing the buck? What I've heard is the police there, the local police, were supposed to be taking care of parking, traffic duty, and they didn't have the responsibility of putting someone on that roof. Did I hear that right? And what else do you know about that?
So I didn't hear directly about the local police, but I do think that there has been a sort of poisonous atmosphere that has crept into police departments nationwide, which probably has manifested in what we saw in Butler, right? Which is police hesitant to do their police duties. And the reason being, again, it goes back to the Democrats and the atmosphere they have created where police don't matter. Police are inherently racist. Let's dismantle local police departments, take away their ability to do actual policing duties. And when some do, in fact, do the duties that they're hired to do, let's take them to court and sue them and make their lives miserable and destroy their families and careers and reputations. So if you're a police officer in America, many have stepped outside their force because they don't want to deal with that headache anymore. And those who do stay are oftentimes, their hands are tied because they're afraid to actually do their jobs. And I suspect that there were at least some on the field that day in Butler who had that same sort of mentality. Whether they openly acknowledged it or not, it may have become inherent in them now, just the way that they're trained in the last couple of years to do their jobs, not as aggressively, not as effectively as what they would have maybe a decade ago.
So we've got to take a pause with Cheryl Chumley. You can get her info at Washington Times, also at cherylchumley.substack.com. I'm going to quote her, and then we'll go into break and come back and talk about her other article, Trump's Finest Moment. She writes, with bullets flying and security detail rushing, a bloodied Trump ultimately rose from an assassination attempt to raise a clenched fist in the air and mouth to a shocked crowd. Fight, fight, fight. And she said, could you imagine Joe Biden doing the same thing? Well, we know it was an iconic moment. We can't imagine Biden doing anything at all in that situation. We'll talk more with Cheryl Chumley on Worldview Matters in just a minute.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbinger's Daily, world news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
Well, we're thankful for our sponsors, Harbinger's Daily, Freedom Project Academy, Patriot Mobile. If you know someone that might be interested in sponsoring Worldview Matters, send us an email, worldviewmatters@fpeusa.org, or go to the website, worldviewmatters.tv. Cheryl, great article, another one, no surprise after you've been doing this for so many years. And when I had Alex Newman on and a few others on this podcast, I say, you're one of the journalists that we can officially call you a journalist without putting air quotes around the word. So I'm thankful for your work. But What an iconic moment, and the Democrats must be seething because here they're thinking, man, we couldn't even show him as a weak, candidate after this, and now we got the iconic photos. Just your thoughts on this, as you say, America's most important presidential election in modern history, and it's about the spirit of what's happening, not just about the man or the personality. Go ahead.
It is the spirit, right? And what a glorious image, right, to carry into this election. It reminds of something as significant of the Marines lifting the flag, or the sailor kissing that woman after the war ended, and so forth. This is an image that's going to go on and live in America's history books. And what makes it so fantastic is it just epitomizes what is great about America, the endless fighting spirit of Americans, which started at our founding, right? As the little dog, as the little guy taking on the big dog, taking on the big British army and so forth, and winning against all odds. And when Trump mouthed that, fight, 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 and he had such a determined expression on his face and the crowd went nuts, that just shows me that the spirit of America isn't just alive and well, but it's actually growing and thriving in recent weeks and months and even years as this president has been attacked, and as Americans who are aware of the unjustified attacks on this president have been embracing him and supporting him. And if you just look at how he rose from that podium and he insisted on Secret Service, wait, give me a second, let me get my shoes. And then he raised his fist. It just speaks to the very I guess the lines that are drawn between the differences of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, because Joe Biden wouldn't even have risen up from the podium, right? We know this.
So we're going to get to that in a minute, and just your Chumley speculation on what you think the Democrats are going to do. Who's going to run in November? But going back to, they're blaming Biden, and this is the Washington Post. I couldn't believe when you put this in your article. Doesn't surprise me. The Washington Post had this headline: Trump allies immediately blame Biden and the Democrats for their rhetoric. And most people probably wouldn't be surprised that this happened if you've been following, or at least watching, the Democrats come unhinged, the one-party big tech media conglomerate. I mean, all the hatred toward Trump, all the accusations and the name-calling for all these years, even the politicians. So it was the rhetoric that, in part, helped facilitate this. And then the Democrat media like the Washington Post saying, no, I can't believe it. They think it was the rhetoric of the Democrats. This is just astounding to me. Is this cognitive dissonance? What is this?
In a way. So my personal view on all this talk for probably a decade now about, hate speech and dangerous speech and offensive speech and labeling speech in America is something that I don't like when either party does it, because the founding fathers didn't give us a system where we had various levels of speech that the government could determine what was offensive, what was not offensive, what was safe to say, and what is not safe to say. And I think when you start pointing out speech as dangerous speech, as an inciting of violence, then you start going down this path of restricting free speech. So I don't like when Republicans do it. I don't like when Democrats do it. That being said, Democrats know that within their camp, within their base of supporters, are sort of the lunatic fringe who are mostly medicated off the rails, go in the streets and throw Molotov cocktails and bricks and pretend that they're just exercising their First Amendment freedoms. So with that in mind, they go out and they take to the podium and they say things like, unleash the whirlwinds. We have to follow them to their homes and their restaurants, get them at their businesses. We need summers of resistance. And that, in effect, is speech that does incite violence. But I don't like to label speech itself as at fault, because that just opens the door for government to step in and control and curtail American speech.
Well, what you just explained, some of those quotes from some of the representatives, it did lead to either, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Rand Paul, different people being intimidated or attacked And it does lead to that. But I want to go to, now we could find a ton of examples. This is just one, Linda Peterson, and I shouldn't even said her name. But here's what she said after Trump was shot. Forgive the language. She said, damn it, he didn't die. Well, at least one supporter did. I'll take what I can get. My heart goes out to the family of the shooter. Know that he died doing what needed to be done. Hopefully someone will accomplish the task before we vote. Now, if you look in further on that thread, she deleted everything and changed her profile picture. But Kevin Sorbo posted that and said, this is the left. And there are some, Cheryl, that are unhinged and are very dangerous. There's a lot of language out there, no surprise, because they tend to be, I don't know, maybe they are more hateful. Maybe because they're the spirit. You mentioned the spirit in the other article about Trump. Maybe it's the spirit. We know it's a demonic spirit behind some of these people that just want to do evil. They want to kill babies. They want to, they are all for Marxism, socialism. So whatever justifies, what is it? The ends justify the means, right? They want to get to their goal of globalism, getting Trump out of the way. Go ahead, your thoughts on this, and then I've got another example to ask you about.
See, we do need to look at this as a spiritual battle, right? And those who know the Bible know that everything on earth here is a battle of principalities. But really, we haven't seen that so open until, I would say, Barack Obama years. And you can see the demonic forces at work to the point where the Democrat Party is not like the Democrat Party of even Bill Clinton years, right? The Democrat Party of Bill Clinton years, I didn't like Bill Clinton. I think he was morally decayed and so forth, but at the same time, he didn't hate America and wasn't actively working to destroy America from within and without. Barack Obama changed all that, and he did it openly, and he brought out some of these dark forces that really, there is no better word to describe them than demonic. And if you look at what the Democrats put out in the streets and either cheer or quietly applaud, right, that either allow to go forward openly or tacitly, they are just minions of Satan in some respects. They love violence. They cling to the idea that their cause is right, and that no matter what happens, no matter what means they have to take to get to that end, even if it's killing somebody like a former president of the United States, that they're justified. There is no greater evil than that, and we really have to look at it as a spiritual battle.
Amen. Worldview Matters. That's the name of this podcast, and it is a worldview issue. Okay, Jeff, run this B-roll of this video. I'm going to ask Cheryl about this. I'm just going to explain to you what all these people in California said. The first guy said the assassination attempt was a false flag. Next guy said it was a setup. Next guy said, no, they did this for publicity, a campaign, these iconic pictures, right? So they created that. And even the guy with a follow-up question saying, well, what about the innocent firefighter who was killed, and what about the other two civilians that were injured? And the guy still turned back and said, false flag. Cheryl, there's some delusion going on, but this is eye-opening to me. I'm not surprised, but this is what people actually believe. How they came to that conclusion, I mean, we could speculate all day, but we have a pretty good idea if you look at the education system and the universities and the media and the Democrat Party and corporations, but they came to these conclusions. So all these people in California are saying there wasn't any attempt on Trump's life. And then did you hear, I think it was Michael Steele the other night say, well, we didn't get a medical report on how much of President Trump's ear was missing, what's under the bandage. And I'm thinking, okay, show Joe Biden's medical records and then we'll show you President Trump's. Go ahead, Cheryl. False flag. It was a false flag. Go ahead.
So the left is calling it a conspiracy that the Trump camp did this to get that iconic photo, right? So he could use it on the campaign trail. The right is calling it a conspiracy of deep state, purposeful, strategic takedown or attempted takedown of Donald Trump. So you have these sort of, outliers of people out there who are looking at this. And the real issue here is that the questions haven't been answered. censored. And that's where conspiracy theories spring from, right? When you have a distrust of government, which certainly in America, historically, we should have a distrust of government. Founding fathers set it up that way, that we should question government and we need to be informed citizens in order to hold government accountable. But along the lines of government, as government grows, it becomes more and more distant from accountability to the people until we're at the point now where we have one party that, as you pointed out a few minutes ago, is basically Marxist in agenda, and the other party that really didn't start listening to the American conservative until Donald Trump years. And so this is where these conspiracy talks are coming from. It's evidence of distrust of government, and really deeper than that, it's evidence of government's failure to answer questions that the citizens need to make informed decisions.
Okay, friends, we're running out of time with Cheryl Chumley. She's got a great article at thewashingtontimes.com on American exceptionalism. That's on the ballot. I mean, we wish we had more time to talk about the platform, but just your quick take on J.D. Vance.
I like him. I like his age, his millennial age, 39. I was just in a discussion with a good friend today about how that's going to help on the campaign trail. I like his story, and I like how he's going to resonate with the blue-collar worker.
That's going to definitely help in those swing states, right? The Rust Belt, and I think it really is going to help. He's got an amazing story. And then his mom, 10 years, was it drug-free, sober, whatever. She was an addict, and she just said, "Yep, that's my son." So there's a lot to like about him. Anyway, we've got to move on. Cheryl, thank you so much for your time. Wait a minute, you got to tease your 2 upcoming books real quick.
Oh, yes. Chloe, it's my first fiction. It comes out in August. And in January, my next nonfiction, God-Given or Bust, Defeating Marxism and Saving America with Biblical Truths. Thank you.
Oh, I love that title. I mean, I'm not into fiction, but I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are, so they can check out Chloe next month. But I can't wait till the other one comes out. We will have you on, Lord willing, in the fall or when it gets closer. But thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of the convention, and safe trip back to Washington. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. Oh, my goodness, so much more. I mean, I print out so many notes for some of these podcasts, and I get to about a fraction of them, but that's the way things go. And there's just a lot to talk about. I joke with some of the other, couple other guests, friends of mine, pastors, and what are we going to talk about for a half hour? There's a lot. You could spend 4 hours. But anyway, thanks, friends, for sharing the podcast. God bless you, and as always, keep speaking the truth about things that matter.